Muskoka and Jasper Park Lodge out in Alberta. The reason that's important is she encouraged us as kids as well to have a similar summer experience. And so, having never been to Muskoka, I applied to a bunch of resorts that I had no idea where they were. Luckily got a job as a bellhop and was fortunate enough to meet my wife there. Thank you to Mum for that. Sandy also worked at Peyton House and followed sort of in those same footsteps. The short funny story about meeting Heidi was the connection between the Hamiltons and Millers. One of Mum's good friends, Mary Stiles from Schumacher, moved to North Toronto and ended up growing up right next door to the Millers. Strange coincidence, so actually Mum and John Miller were in a wedding party together in their younger years. So just a small world story. You've heard about some of Mum's involvement and community service, so I think that's a huge thing she's distilled in all of us. You did not hear that she was also a Cub leader as Dad was participating in sports and coaching. She jumped in on the Cub side with the lesser-known name of Mang the Bat. So I know I think she was late to the party. I know there's a Kayla, some Rusties in the audience, perhaps a Hottie, not sure about a Baloo or a Bagheera, but anyways, Mum was in there helping out. She grew up, again, as you heard, with an older brother, Bill. She also caddied golf for her father, so she was familiar or knew what she was getting into, I think, when she had 3 sons. She was a boy mom and sort of, I think, set expectations accordingly as to what boys do and what sort of trouble they get into. One particular trip that comes to mind was in 1984 when somehow Dad got a full month of holiday and we decided to visit his brother in Wyoming and continue traveling around the U.S. with 5 people, and it couldn't have been a large vehicle. But I just remember the looks that Mum would get, just sort of, why would I feel so sorry for you, as 3 boys sort of ran around a hotel or through a restaurant. But that definitely sticks out in my mind. And it wasn't just the boys, but it was male dogs as well. She grew up with a black lab named Tar, who was mischievous. The dogs were as well trained and as well behaved as the boys. There was Smokey, the black lab, and then Moose, who some of you may remember, Chocolate Moose fondly, the 100-pound chocolate lab. And when Heidi first came over to the house in one of her first visits, and we sat in the family room to just have a chat with Mum and Dad, I sat on one couch and Heidi sat on the other. And then Moose was on the couch beside her and had his paws right up on her shoulders. She was a bit shocked and sort of looked at Mum as if, what's going on here? And Mum's response to her, of course, was, you're sitting on Moose's couch. She was direct, as Mary Jane said. She was direct. But again, what I'll remember most, and lots of memories, are around hospitality, the kitchen and family meals. Mum was one who always said your plate had to be colorful, whether that was with vegetables, salmon patties, celery with cheese whiz. There were a multitude of things, but the plate needed to be colorful. And then there were desserts. There were Nanaimo bars and rum balls at Christmas. Those were some of my favorites. And her famous apple crisp. And by the end of her modifying her apple crisp recipe, I think we had her putting 1 apple in there, and there was about 3 inches of brown sugar and butter. And that's what her boys liked. Another funny story from the kitchen that some of you may have heard, and certainly the grandchildren know is a bit of a threatening story, is the story of the wooden spoon. Commonly known as a cooking utensil, could also be used to keep 3 young boys in line, or the threat thereof, at the kitchen table. I'm not quite sure what we did to merit a whack on the wrist or a whack on the arm. It may have been something we said, it may have been bad manners, could have been the wrong fork, I'm not sure. But the one story that I remember specifically was when Scotty, perhaps the most precocious of the boys, was acting particularly naughty and the wooden spoon that was placed strategically on the table came out, and he wasn't going to get hit on the wrist, he was going to get hit on the bum. But you didn't hear the sound of wood and clothing. You heard wood and ceramics. Scotty had put a plate down his pants. There's lots of questions to be asked. How long was the plate down his pants? Why was the plate down his pants? Sandy and I thought it was hilarious. Scotty did too for about 2 seconds. Mom, not so much. Not so much. You heard about George Brown and Mom's time as a professor there. That was one of the best lunches going. And she invited you to George Brown. It was the students getting training, and it was an inexpensive 5-course meal, but you better have about 2 hours available for those that got to partake in that. Dinners at home, again, morphed about 15 years ago for birthdays into dinners out. We would do a family adult dinner out in May. Mom and Dad, as some of you may know, share the same birth date in the same year. It's a little odd, but I guess they were meant to be soulmates. So we would go out in May, and we'd go downtown Toronto or North Toronto, Oakville, Mississauga. Mom would have a great time, especially with the daughters-in-law, and inevitably by the end of the meal there'd be some trip planned. It never happened, but there was lots of talk about a girls' trip and girls gone wild in New York, who knows. But those were good dinners. I think as I close and hand this off to the grandchildren, I think of Mom, and she was always there to support us and to be there. I am sure she is looking down on us today with a sly smile and a wink and a chilled bottle of Kim Crawford close by. Thank you.
It's a hard speech to follow, but I'll give it my best shot. So, when Grandma was young, she always dreamed of having a cottage, but could never convince her dad to go. So about 25 years ago, she took matters into her own hands, and her and Grandpa got a cottage in Lurgan Beach, just outside of Kincardine. A place she envisioned as somewhere the whole family could come together, relax, make memories, and it was exactly that. For as long as I can remember, weekends in the summer meant enjoying the cottage with Grandpa and Grandma, all the cousins. We would often play board games, bocce ball, take long walks on the beach, but Grandma always had one priority above all else: protecting her favorite spot on the beach right in front of the cottage. As soon as the cousins would wake up, she would often send someone down to claim our spot. And once it was secured, we would take it for the day. All the cousins would get together, we would often read, and just enjoy the beach and each other's company. Often at the cottage, we would go for walks. Grandma always made a point of trying to get out for one walk a day. And at the cottage, the cousins would join, and we would also bring our dog, Maddie. She was very fond of dogs and would always try and spend time with them. She had a genuine love for animals. And I remember late one night, we were on the verge of a family trip to Mexico, and she decided she didn't want to go. So me and my dad, we were planning to go over, and we realized we better bring the dog along with us, as that would always get her happy and make her feel better. But yeah, me, my dad, and Grandpa all tried to convince her to come along, but I think it was Maddie's well-tempered manner that really sealed the deal and encouraged Grandma to come. Then that same love of animals always came into her travels. Her and Grandpa traveled all over the world, often to Africa to go on a safari, and she would always make it a point to send a postcard home to the cousins, and I still cherish those postcards to this day. Looking back at Grandma, that's what she did best. She brought people together, whether around the cottage table, along a beach at sunset, or through a postcard from somewhere far away. She made you feel remembered, no matter where she was. And those memories she worked hard to create will be with us for the rest of our lives.
some of my favorite memories are also at the cottage, or as she often said, her cottage. Grandma would often meditate on the sandy path down to the beach, sitting and looking out at the water. Sometimes she would sit there for hours. I always admired her ability to slow down and truly be in the present. Sometimes I would even try to join her. But we also had a lot of fun with Grandma at the cottage. We played bocce on the beach, croquet out front, and lots of cards and cribbage. Although there weren't many games of cribbage after one game got a bit too heated, and cards may have ended up in the fire. Grandma was always her grandchildren's biggest supporter. She could often be found watching our hockey, baseball, and hockey games. Not necessarily because she loved the sports, but because she loved watching the people she cared about. Even though I didn't live in Oakville, Grandma always made the time to come and see me. One of my favorite times of the year was around Christmas, when Grandma would bring 2 gingerbread sets down to Toronto and we would spend hours decorating them together. Grandma was also always incredibly creative. She made each grandchild a quilt when they were born, and I still have mine by my bed today. She almost always had a puzzle on the go, and I love to check in and see her progress. I think I inherited my love of puzzles from her. My cousins and I were also lucky to travel many years down south with Grandma and Grandpa. I remember walking down to the beach with Grandma to go snorkeling and pointing out the neat fish in the water to one another. Later in the afternoon, she might join us for a swim in the pool or just sit nearby watching all the cousins have fun together. Grandma was kind, loving, supportive, grounded, and deeply caring. She always wanted to know how people were really doing. She would often ask, "Are you happy with what you're doing? Are you having fun?" She also loved telling stories about when she was about my age at U of T having fun, including the times she and her roommates would drop water balloons or maybe even ice cream down from the balcony onto businessmen walking by in the suits. A conversation with Grandma always brought light to my day. When I was feeling overwhelmed with exams in school, she reminded me how lucky I was and how important it is to make time for fun and the people you love. If she were here today, I think she would probably ask us one more time, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling? And some of us might say a lower number. She might try to tell us that it's actually higher. But I think she would remind us that every day is a gift, and I know I will carry those words with me forever.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long.
Thank you. And Kay's grandson, Campbell Hamilton, will share a reading from the book of Ecclesiastes.
To everything there is a season, a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up which that is planted. And a time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance.
Thank you for that. So today is our time to search for light in the midst of grief through stories, songs, and our faith. And services like this, being together like this, is so important because while we know in our minds that death is a part of life, it feels very different when it touches someone we love. Even when we have watched someone age, even when we know that the body and the mind is growing weary, even when we know someone cannot be made well again, death still disorients us. It changes the landscape. And grief can feel like walking in the dark. But we are not without light. As Christians, we are an Easter people, which means that we trust that even in the deepest darkness, we are never alone. Good Friday is real. The sorrow, the loss, the silence. And Good Fridays, we know, come into all of our lives through things like difficult diagnoses, changes that we don't choose, failing health, and grief. But our faith tells us that these dark days are never the end of the story. Easter morning comes. In life, in death, in life beyond death, God is with us, and that promise holds us through this grieving time. And we also have all of the light that comes from these amazing memories and stories that we have heard today, in the laughter and the legacy that Kay has left of love and family devotion, a great sense of humor, a sense of incredible welcoming hospitality, humility, her uncanny ability to relate to and take a true interest in others, her devotion to community outreach, education, her appreciation of different cultures and all of the animals of our world. All of this can help us through this grieving time and fill our hearts with thanksgiving for the life that we all had the privilege to share with her. By the time I came to know her, Kay's health was already declining. There were things that I knew she could no longer do with ease. And yet, every Sunday that she was here, without fail, she would wait in this lineup to talk to me after church, and she would always give me the biggest hug and say, "You know, you're doing a really good job. Don't ever let anything get you down. Never. You're just great." Every single time. It didn't matter what kind of week I had. Kay offered this incredible encouragement that was sincere and gentle, the best hugs, absolutely unwavering. And those words meant something, believe me. Some weeks, they made all the difference. And the fact that she could offer that encouragement while dealing with her own challenges, that meant something. Even as her own world was becoming smaller, she offered this matter-of-fact, loving strength to me. I will never forget that. That light, that love, that compassion, that does not die. The light that she kindled in her family and her friends in this church, it remains. All that encouragement that she gave, the love that she shared, the faith that she lived, that light continues to guide. So remember her. Share stories of her. Today, this is just the beginning. Say her name often. Make sure that generations that follow will know her too. I do not know for sure what lies beyond this life, but I trust this. We are not alone. And I trust that Kay is held in the love of God now, as surely as she was held in the love of God throughout her days here. And I trust that what feels like darkness to us is not darkness to God. So as you grieve, I want you to be gentle with yourselves. There is no right way to walk this path. There will be moments of sadness, moments of gratitude. There will be tears, and there will be even more laughter. You will find your way. God's love is stronger than death, and light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never overcome it. Because in life and death, in life beyond death, we are never alone.